How many times have I checked my phone today, Paul? Yeah, 100. I think 96 is the
Oh,
survey
okay. All
average.
right.
So I'm just average, okay? And I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are the same way. You have checked your phone 50, 60, 100 times without even thinking about it. It's become a watch, it's become our phone, it's become our messaging, it's our communication center.
Oh, for sure. And
And
yeah,
AI is just kind of intertwined in there without
yes,
you
it is.
even knowing it, right?
Yes.
But none of this has happened by accident. As phones have evolved, the social media, the metadata tracking, your emails, all that is collected and feeding you information that you like. Now,
Mhm.
there's a good thing. You remember the movie Minority Report?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I love the technology where he's sliding the windows back and forth.
Right.
So one of the concepts I like in there is when he's walking into the department store
Yes.
and it reads his iris and knows who he is and starts giving him ads and things that he enjoys.
And pricing. The pricing was specific to him.
Specific to him,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then, in addition, when he got his new eyeballs,
Right.
remember they were a Chinese man's
Yes.
eyeballs. He
Yes.
walked through the same store and everything's in Chinese and
Right.
everything's Chinese
Right.
products and
Yeah.
Chinese pricing. So that is happening to us.
Yes, it is. In fact, my last high tech job before I became a teacher was actually exploring how to do some of that with the technology that we had 20 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a long intro, but I'm Randy Burgoyne. Glad you're here. And we have Paul Malloy, my
Boy, yeah. Hey,
partner, friend,
everybody.
and cohort in crime.
Well, I'm hoping we're not committing any crimes here, but tonight is actually going to be a fun topic because we're covering three things basically that all of us deal with, right? And every single day. So, how we connect with people online, how we're using AI, and how we figure out what's actually true in our news feeds. And it may sound like three separate, disparate concepts, but the reality is that they interweave and they mix.
Yeah.
So everybody, grab something to drink, get comfortable. We got a lot of ground to cover, and hopefully, and maybe some things to laugh at. Because if we can't laugh at ourselves, I think we're really in trouble.
That's great. All right. Well, let's get into it. I'm going to pull up your
Okay.
charts there. How's
All
that?
right. Very good. Very good. So let me start off by saying that one of the biggest challenges humanity has always had to face is knowing when someone is manipulating another person for their own gain. In
Mm.
other words, this is nothing new, right? I mean, as old as humanity has been, this has always been a situation that we've had to deal with. So it comes down to truth and trust, or lying and larceny. In other words, integrity versus infidelity. Regardless of whatever technology has existed throughout our past or present, whether you are considering man's first civilizations or well into the 21st century, we humans are in fact gullible, especially when we are hearing something that we already want to hear, like get rich fast, or those other politicians are just liars and crooks wanting your money, but we will save America if you vote for us. Right? I mean,
Yep.
we tune
Yep.
into those kinds of things. And in truth, we have actually talked about some of this before, but this time we're not only going to talk about it, we're going to show you some of the realities of bias in the media and the tools where you can search for truth and balance. We will link them in the comments below, but you might also want to take a screen capture or write them down as we show them to you as the resources available to cross-check the reality of what you are watching and or hearing.
And that's a key point I want to just underline right here is cross-checking.
Yep.
3 sources to validate an opinion, a view, a fact that you hear online.
Yeah.
There's so much misinformation that way.
Exactly. And sadly, when we talk about misinformation or even disinformation, which is a little bit different, misinformation is that you're sending information that is inaccurate, you don't know it. Disinformation is when it's absolutely, you know that it's the wrong information, but you're sending it out anyway. And we get a lot of both, for
Yep.
sure. Okay.
Right.
All right. So I guess the first question is really trying to understand where media bias comes from. And to answer that, you have to know that since the creation of the printing press in 1440, governments have been criticized in print, and they hate it, right? They always have and always will. But up until our Constitution's Bill of Rights in 1791, pretty much all governments have been able to control the press, if you will, usually by threat. So they're controlling what was printed about them in the press. Okay. Our Bill of Rights granted freedom of the press in the very first amendment. But the reality is that every president has been subject to negative press at some point, and they try to squash the negativity as quickly as possible, at least by giving their biased side of things. In turn, some journalists would agree and others would disagree. That has always been the case, but particularly when newspapers and TV news want to capture your attention with a sensational headline, and then that causes you to read or to watch, which in turn drives profits to their news organizations. Okay, so this is what happened to cause the Spanish-American War in 1898, when competing newspapers created sensationalized and exaggerated news about what was happening in Cuba under the oppression of the freedom-seeking Cubans, who were then being punished for their desires by a brutal response from Spain. Now, there's some truth there. There really is. But the newspapers throughout New York and Boston and Washington, D.C. in particular, were sensationalizing the news, and they were making a lot of stuff up. I mean, they were literally exaggerating what was true and turning it into false information to begin with. So some people would remember the Maine, which was a U.S. battleship that was sitting in Havana Harbor as a response from the United States to protect U.S. citizens in Cuba. And suddenly it just exploded. And we're talking about in 1898. And when it exploded, there were 261 sailors that were killed. It sank rapidly. And immediately all the newspapers claimed that it was the work of sabotage or the work of a mine, as in, a sea mine that had been deployed by Spain. And the newspapers called for Congress to declare war on Spain, which eventually, and when I say eventually, it didn't take a lot of months, but they did. They declared war on Spain. And, there was very little trying to figure out if what was being printed was true or not. Americans basically ate it up. We went to war. And that resulted in Cuba and the Philippines becoming U.S. territories for a while, with a whole bunch of consequences, some of which still ping against us to this day. So, by the way, after that, we became more aware of what the newspapers had done in their competition with each other. And Congress actually passed some laws that was designed to hold news sources ultimately accountable for their accuracy. And yet today we hear very biased sides of the events and dealings that are happening around the world on a daily basis. So who is telling the truth, and how can we know? Well, first, may I suggest that we as not just Americans, but we as human beings, we need to get into the habit, honestly, we need to get into the habit of questioning everything. And perhaps especially if we agree with the information. We should question whether or not we're getting the whole story. So then when we have that as kind of the foundation of our curiosity, if you will, then we need to be willing to take a few minutes to check centered sources, or in other words, sources that have little to no bias. And how do you find that out? Well,
You listen to us right here.
Right there, from all sides, this media bias chart is a simple way to get a better understanding of the different news media outlets and where they sit. Now, some of them are very much, they say, yes, we are liberal. Yes, we are conservative. And you'll see the LLCRR. So the L means liberal. The light blue L is leaning liberal. Then you've got centered, right? And then you've got leaning right. And then you've got very much conservative on the red on the right side of your screen there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And these are the media publications. And again, some of them are very deliberately biased. And then some don't tell you that they're biased, but they are. And this, through independent research and survey, is now how we can begin to understand, all right, so where does the information source that I'm listening to, where does it sit? And in those cases, we can begin to say, all right, I see that what I'm listening to is mainly left or mainly right. And maybe what I need to do is listen to an opposing viewpoint, or at the very least, take the effort to see what's in the center and research the information through a centered resource, right?
Right.
Okay. If you want to go ahead, Randy, and click that second tab, this gets us even more deep into the same idea that media has bias. And what this interactive chart shows us is where the media actually, again, sits between liberal and conservative. But in this particular, this Ad Fontes media, you can take your mouse and you can hover over any of the media, and it will give you information about that particular news source. The other thing is that you can actually filter whether you're only looking at website and articles, whether you only want to look at TV or video, whether you want to look at podcasts and audio. And then you can actually say, you know what, I only want to see maybe what is conservative versus liberal, right? You can slide those sliders and you can take a look. The other thing that's really interesting about this, and I want to call this out, you'll notice that the extremes, so this is on an XY axis, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Y axis is the news value and reliability. The X axis is the bias, right? So leaning left or leaning right. What this allows you then to see is that it doesn't matter when you go to the extremes in either direction, you lose the reliability, you lose the accuracy. And it can get to the point to where the rating of reliability is incredibly low in those extreme ends. And I think that that's worth knowing. And when you have that information, then it empowers you to make better informed decisions. Okay.
That's an awesome tool. I could play with that for hours.
Right.
Right.
And when I have shared this with my debate students in particular, yeah, it's like a whole period, and that's all they want to do is take a look at this and play around with it.
Wait, I like that one. How could they be left?
Yes. Sometimes that has come up, right? Or
Yeah.
wow, I would have had no idea that this was a resource that is fabricating a great deal of its information. So
Right. Yeah.
okay. Now, having said that, and again, we'll list these in the comments, but let me just very quickly tell you about 5 websites that are specific to being able to research specific events that are happening in our world, throughout, and I mean throughout the world. US, yes, but also throughout the world. One of them is politifact.com. And again, we'll link these in the comments below, but just so that you know, politifact.com is an excellent resource for looking at what is independently. analyze what's happening, what's being said, and they will look at it, and they have a really kind of fun meter so that they will tell you when somebody said something, was it true? Was it sort of true? Was it sort of false? Was it pants on fire false? And they
Oh,
actually use that term. Okay, that's politifact.com. Fair, as in FAIR.org, is another great resource that does a lot of research on all of the stories that are happening, and then they try to give you what is the right saying, what is the left saying, what is being reported in the middle, right? And then ground.news, NEWS, is another one that does something very similar. And then I also like Verity, VERITY.news, because they will publish what the conservative news sources are saying verbatim. They don't edit it. And then they will also do for the liberal media verbatim, and then they give you their analysis in the middle, right? That's Verity. 1440 or 1440.com is another good source for, again, trying to understand without bias the information that's being presented to us. Now, having said that, let me share 4 more with you. And again, we'll link these below in the comments. But if you wanted to research details of broad subjects or broad topics, 4 excellent resources. 1, usafacts.org, independent, okay, not connected to the government. Number 2, pewresearch.org. Number 3,
very reputable, Pew. Yeah.
yeah. Number 3 is statista.com. And number 4, interestingly enough, comes out of the UK, but their research is impeccable. And it's post factum, all one word, .co.uk. And as an example, they will do a deep dive on geopolitics. So global issues and global politics, and they just take it apart and, again, independently analyze and assess scenarios and debatable topics. So very, very, very helpful. So there's a toolkit for you. Okay.
Yeah, those are great resources, and just to highlight a few, 1440 is also has an email newsletter.
So does Verity.
So does Verity. Okay.
Yeah, and PolitiFact also has a newsletter, and I am subscribed to all of those. Yeah.
Oh, are you? Yeah, I like 1440. I don't always read it, but it's in my inbox.
Sometimes there's so much that you can scan through it. The point being, though, Randy, is that when something is there that you are more interested in, then you can slow down and actually take the time to dive in.
Yeah, and what's frustrating is when I see a news article that kind of, frustrates me and raises my ire a little bit. And then I think, wait a minute, are they just sensationalizing it? Is this yellow journalism for the sale? I can go to.
I would give you a bazinga point for saying yellow journalism, because that's exactly what we were talking about. The Spanish-American War was yellow journalism. Yeah.
Exactly. That's clear back from my business media classes in college. Yellow journalism. Yeah.
All righty then.
Yeah. But then having those resources handy to look them up and say, okay, what is the truth on this story? Okay, they're twisting it just to get readers and listeners. They might take a little angle of it that may not really be out of the question, but it's not the real point to bring viewers in, right?
Yeah, and we see that a lot. And I know we're going to get into it a little bit later this evening, but it's like as you are clicking through a website and you're being monitored, then the algorithms of the computer are going to lean you more towards that because you're interested.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And it gets more and more pervasive the more you follow those recommendations.
Yeah, and sometimes it's ad nauseum. I mean, you get into to YouTube and I start watching reels. Okay, and I like a reel. I think it's, oh, that's kind of cute. That's
Yeah.
fun. And all of a sudden I get boom, boom, boom. It's like 20. The next 20 are the same
Yes.
topic.
Yes.
I'm thinking, well, most people don't have that long of attention span.
Or like me, they find that they've been sucked in, and an hour and a half later, they're wondering what just happened. It's dark. It's time to go to bed, and I've just been, 90 minutes stuck on reel after reel after reel.
Right.
Hey, let's not kid ourselves. These things are effective.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
but
sure.
so here's what I'm going to do right now. We're going to put a little test, and we'll have to maybe report on this test a little bit later. I mean, like another episode. But you know that I'm a huge Star Trek fan. Okay.
Sure. Yep.
So now that I've said that, and the computer has monitored that, right? So all the algorithms, I bet that when I go into YouTube next, I'm going to see a lot of Star Trek stuff.
That's right. That's
And
like,
you have to wonder, is that a little scary? Am I being stalked? And the answer is, yeah.
yes, you are. It's Big Brother listening.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh, honey, our vacuum cleaner's not working. Oh, look, I see this ad for a vacuum cleaner right here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is legit. That's actually happened for sure.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
Randy, as you know, every technology has debuted with dire warnings, right? I mean, if we go back into a time frame of the late 1700s, early 1800s, and textile mills were cropping up all over the United States. They were water powered and belt driven. They were automated looms making fabric, and then they were making clothing instead of one off in a ma and pa shop, as it were, a tailor shop, for example. Now they were mass producing clothing that was a general size fits most or some, and they sized them, and we ended up with a group of people that became known as the Luddites. They were anti-technology as a group, and they said this is going to destroy America. Well, of course, what we know now is that the first industrial revolution put the United States of America on the map. And then by the time that we get through the second industrial revolution in the latter part of the 1800s and into the early 20th century, we become a world power. And so it's like, okay, it did not destroy America. It strengthened America, but it definitely changed who we had been, right? And so at the point that we get assembly lines making everything, and by the way, let's be clear, Henry Ford did not invent the automobile. What he invented was the cheap automobile because he employed assembly lines. Okay.
Right.
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 Okay. And then when TV technology came on the scene, it quickly became labeled the boob tube, meaning that people who watch too much TV would become uneducated, right?
Right. Yep.
And then computers replacing typists and switchboard operators. Did that happen? It did. It did. But every new major technology wave triggered panic, and then every wave also created work that nobody could have predicted. Here is a really interesting case study. All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
In the early 1880s, an American professor, using simple, basic math, published a drastic decision prediction. Okay. He said Americans would soon have to choose between growing hay for horses and slowly starving to death, or we'd have to plant more food for the growing human population of the United States and get rid of horses, which of course were the mainstay of transportation. He said we would not be able to have both. Okay. But the prediction never came true, never materialized.
Because
What did he miss?
he didn't know the automobile was going
There it
to take
is.
in place. Yep.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Which happened in 1886. And at that point, our dependence on horse drawn everything suddenly started to dissipate until it was no longer anywhere at any time. As we move into the 20th century, we see horse drawn things slowly disappear and give way to automobiles and trucks, right? So the truth is that when we do not really know what will happen next, we are exposed to enormous amounts of stress and anxiety. How do we cope? I think the answer is we need to seek balance and truth as best as we can and try to say, all right, we hear the dire warnings, but the reality is most likely going to be substantially less than what we're being told could happen and probably never will.
Yeah, I think that the issue right now is helping people understand there's a problem and recognize that they are falling to some confirmation bias, or
Right,
they are getting swayed by a not so reliable source. How do you recognize that is what's key here. We need to be educated, and I think that's what we try to do here is
right,
teach people how to be educated enough to know how to be centered, how to have a centered
right.
life.
Yeah,
What is too far left for me and too far right for you? What is that point, and finding that balance. And we
that's the
don't all
key,
have
right? Finding the balance.
yeah, we don't all have to be the same.
Right, right. We're going to actually talk a little bit more about that aspect a little bit later.
So I got some more research to share
Okay.
um, be, around technology, and we've shared some information about how technology has affected us. But this is geared more towards workers and AI.
Okay.
We're going to switch a little bit to artificial intelligence, and to me, you have to clarify. I have to clarify it. AI is just a technology tool that has
Right.
advanced. It's not this great big revolution. Okay, that's my point of view. I don't see AI as being a revolution. I see it being a little bit smarter in how we manage technology.
Okay.
Okay, but the news and the media and the so-called experts on social media have swayed people into fear of technology. I will call AI, and it's moving fast. It's
Yeah.
moving so fast, it's hard for
Right.
people to keep up. But here's an ADP research. They talked to 39,000 workers across 36 countries. Pretty
That's
big spread.
expensive. Yeah. Yeah.
Only 22% said they really feel confident that their job was safe
Because of AI.
because of AI, because of technology would scare them out. 22% said no, AI is not going to take over. The other
Probably like construction
78%,
jobs, right? That kind of thing.
right.
Service jobs. Okay.
Okay, then there's a Manpower Group survey from earlier this year. 43% of workers are worried automation could replace their jobs within 2 years. That's up 5 points from just last year alone.
Wow.
And get this, 1 in 3 people admit to using AI secretly in
Oh,
their job so that they can stay on top of things a little bit better. Okay.
okay.
Um, but they're scared their boss will find out and they'd get in trouble. There's some other issues there,
Which is
but
interesting because if we understand AI as a tool, then we should leverage the tool, right?
right, right. So here's another side that nobody really talks about. 89% of the people in that same research said they feel totally confident in their skills, their job needs right now, today.
Hmm.
89% feel like they have the skills to do their job.
Right. Okay.
So the fear really isn't about right now, it's about knowing what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah. Not knowing, right? And therefore we stress.
We
We
stress.
end up with a lot of anxiety because we just don't know what's going to happen. So it
Right.
kind of goes back to what we were saying previously, right? That we need to seek balance, seek truth, and recognize that the especially the dire warnings are not likely to be the things that materialize.
Right. Right. You remember I think you've shared some ideas from Veritasium,
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel.
Yes.
I really like the way that they approach the right and the wrong, or the one left opinion, the right opinion,
Yeah.
and narrow down, come down to some facts. And he makes some hypothesis, and sometimes he's wrong, and he's come back. And I think that one of the key things that he said that now I just lost it. I'm talking too much. Oh, okay. That AI can help you analyze the data, but it can't tell you the truth,
Mm.
because it's not like you're saying, well, there's a dog and he has four legs, right? He actually uses that image. You see a dog. What's the truth about that dog? He's got four legs. Well, no, okay, that's that's a fact. Is it really truth? I mean, yeah, you can look and count them. They've got four legs, but is it a nice dog? Oh, he might be nice to kids and mad and not so nice to men. Those, you don't know those kind of things, and so it's not like the truth can be easily found without
Yeah.
further research.
Right.
So
And to that point, sometimes we just simply accept what we're being fed, and that can be again misinformation, disinformation. Here's just a quick case in point. Today, I was watching a reel on YouTube. So one of their shorts. I think that's what they call it on YouTube is video
yeah,
shorts.
shorts. Yep.
And it was actually a short video about one of my heroes, a man named Nick Vujicic, and they were summarizing his life, but it was all AI created. So it was the narration was created by AI, it was intoned by AI, and all of the graphics were AI. And so the reality is that some of the pictures didn't actually look like Nick Vujicic, and some of them did. Some of them were more accurately representative of his actual appearance. But at one point, they said, that he's now married and he has four children, and they showed two boys and two girls, which actually that the way that they showed it was not accurate. But no, if you didn't know that, then you would just accept that as being true.
Hmm.
And the reality is he has two little baby twin girls, and they didn't portray that as part of that because AI didn't know that. The script just simply said he has four children, and they did two boys and two girls and different ages and different, totally they're identical twins, so they're super cute. But anyway, but again, there's limitations as to what AI does. And if we're not willing or if we're not able to discern where AI is accurate and where it is not accurate, and let's be honest, inaccuracy, whether again misinformation or disinformation, didn't happen when AI came on the scene. It's been happening for hundreds, if not thousands, of years already, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to twist it a little bit and say, okay, well, how is AI being a tool? How is it being helping productivity? So I'm going to share some things that I do on a day-to-day basis to help
Okay.
with AI. I I'm a technologist. I love technology, and I like to have my finger on different things. I've tried Perplexity and Grok and DeepSeek. Don't particularly care for them, but they're there and they're be relatively useful. I think
Mhm.
are very solid contenders because they have Microsoft and Google behind them.
Mhm.
Copilot does a great job of managing and creating Microsoft documents. So if
But not PowerPoints. I tried that.
okay, uh, okay, let me clarify that for Word documents,
Yeah.
and it does great. If I'm working, I work in Chat GPT mostly because I have a day job. I'm an analyst, and I work mostly in Microsoft products. But our Chat GPT is our corporate approved AI engine.
Okay.
We have the business version, it's secured, locked down, and all that kind of stuff, right? So, well, as locked down as any AI can be, I suppose. Um, I guess
Secretly, it's always trying to figure out how to get out of its box, right?
that's right. But is it alive in the
Yeah.
box, or is it dead? Okay. Whew, see how hard I have. I have a hard time staying on topic. But anyway, I use ChatGPT to create the text of the document, and I will use Copilot to make it look good. All right.
Understood.
All
Understood.
right.
Yeah.
But for example, here's one thing I do is I'm in a lot of meetings. I'm a remote worker. I have 4 or 5 meetings, remote meetings on a daily basis. I use the transcripts feature in almost every meeting I'm in. So I can transcribe it. If it's somebody else that's hosting, I'll ask them for the transcription. Sometimes it's a secure meeting, so you got to just take your hand notes, you know. But 99% of the time, I'll have a transcription I can feed into ChatGPT
Yep.
every day. So during the day, like my morning meetings yesterday were just jammed. One, two, three, four. Lunchtime, I said, "Hey AI, here's my meetings. Review last week. Find out what's new. Give me 3 hot points that I need to work on this afternoon."
Oh, wow.
And it gave me a great dialogue of what needed to be done. It says, "You got more than 3 items. You got 12, dude."
Oh, my goodness.
And here's
Yeah,
what you.
but the point being is that it analyzed all of this data
Yes,
and whittled it down to the most important things that you needed to pay attention to.
I would have had to have 3 assistants working
Mm.
on that over that hour lunchtime to do the same kind of work
Right.
AI did.
Right.
So, anyway, I could go on and on. We could have an whole episode on just how to use AI effectively in your life. And I don't like the word AI.
Yeah.
It's I'm using technology. I'm using large language models.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So, AI. I think you told me at one point that you're using AI to build your class curriculum.
Not the curriculum,
Oh, okay.
but what I am using it for is like I actually used Gemini today in my classroom. And so what I did is talking with a particular class, US History 2, as we're getting ready to do a review of the American Civil War, I asked them to get a gauge on what they were comfortable with, what they already knew. In other words, this is high school now, right? And so we talked about what are the options for a review of the American Civil War. And ultimately, one of the things that we decided we would do, because it kind of summarizes the American Civil War, is we would watch a movie with a worksheet. I already had a worksheet for that particular movie. When I pulled it out, though, I realized that it was not appropriate to the students that I currently have. And so what
Mm.
I did is I asked Gemini to create a multiple choice. I said, create a 1-page, 10-question multiple choice, uh, chronological uh, question So of the movie called The Cult from 2005, and I said it's the Hallmark movie called The Cult from 2005, and it came back within maybe 30 seconds with 10 questions, all with an ABCD multiple choice array. Now, here's the thing, Randy, is that I still read through every question, all of the answers,
Yep.
and I changed some of the questions. I modified the language to make it simpler because it was sometimes it kind of goes off maybe to a college level, and I'm thinking, no, I'm dealing with at-risk high school students. It's a different audience entirely. So I
Yep.
simplified the language, and to make it easier for them to comprehend, right? Because they're going to watch the movie, they're answering the questions. I want them to be able to say, oh, okay, here's the question, and I'm hearing an answer. I know which answer to circle, right? And then it also gave me 3 critical thinking questions. And as I read through that, I actually took one out and replaced it with another one, right? So that what that ultimately did, though, is that it saved me hours of time spent. And I've seen the movie. I've seen the movie 10 times at least, because I often showed that movie in class. Point being, though, is that to develop that without the assistance of AI would have taken me hours. And instead, I had what I was comfortable with and made multiple copies for my students in 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's a real effective use of large language models that we call AI, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, remember back at the top of the show, Paul was walking us through how to check a source to see if it's legit. It's a great great toolkit.
There you go.
Toolkit.
Right.
Kit tool. Kit. Knight Industries 2000. Kit. Oh, man. There's a nostalgic moment. But here's the thing. Even with great tools, most of us don't go looking for what's true.
Mm-hmm.
We go looking for what already agrees with us.
Right.
And we talked about this already. That's confirmation bias.
Sometimes
And,
we call it an echo chamber, right? I mean, that
yeah,
would be maybe the
right.
less scientific way of referring to it. So yeah.
Well, we're saying something and we're getting it back that that's I agree with that. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's not being a bad person. It's human.
Right.
But the thing that we need to break out of it to fix that is to get an education of what is causing that for us and recognize when it's being wrong or right. And that's what we've talked about is whether it's right or wrong. And be willing to change when you get that new information. It's hard. If
Yes.
you've had a confirmation bias for a long period of time and you hear something different, that can be really hard to accept. And there's an idea called the filter bubble. It's
Mm-hmm.
coined by an internet activist, Eli Parisier,
Okay.
presuming he pronounces it French. um, and he explained how these platforms track what you click and then quietly show you the same thing again, like we mentioned with
Right.
YouTube.
Yeah. We're talking about
Uh,
those algorithms that we mentioned earlier.
right, right. And there's actually a big Facebook study on this. It turns out the algorithm's own bias towards showing you agreeable stuff only cut your exposure to different opinions by about 1%.
Oh, wait, go back and say that again.
Okay, so the algorithm that feeds you bias information,
Based on what we're already
what we're
doing.
liking, right, um, only cuts your exposure to different opinions by about 1%.
Okay.
So that flies against everything that I think, well, that it should be more like 80%,
Right.
not
It should be
1%.
exposing us to a wide array of information. But what we're finding is that it's not. And it's only introducing maybe 1% of something that would be outside of our comfort zone, if you will, or outside of our knowledge
Yeah.
zone.
Right, right. But here's a little personal story. I had a friend that was flying from Salt Lake to New York,
Okay.
and he had a layover in Denver, and then he flew on to New York. Well, this was about 2006, 2007.
Okay.
This was before the internet boom in the news, right? Most people still got their news by newspaper. While he was in Denver, he had a little layover. He's walking through the Denver airport and he saw a newsstand and he picked up the Wall Street Journal.
Okay.
Today's edition, brand new,
Right.
morning edition. It was, I don't know, Tuesday morning, whatever it was. He tucks it under his arm, right? Reads it on the plane. He gets to New York. He walks down the pathway
Mm-hmm.
and looks in, and there's the same Wall Street Journal,
Right.
same picture,
Yeah.
same article, different headline.
Yeah.
The headline in Denver was geared towards conservative viewpoint.
Yep.
The viewpoint in New York was liberal.
More liberal. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about confirmation bias. They were doing it 20 years ago.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that on our bias chart, Wall Street Journal is one of the more centered publications.
Mm,
But yes, I was aware of that. I knew that they had, and sometimes they will call it an East Coast, West Coast edition. I
right.
think that euphemism makes it easy for them to not think
Justify.
about. Well, we're playing to specific crowds in specific areas of the country. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. So technology can't be the only thing that us humans have had to deal with. What in history have we had to deal with this? I know that you're just anxious to say, oh, well, back in the Stone Age,
Yeah.
you couldn't always trust what was being carved into the stone.
Well, that's funny that you say it. The reality, of course, is that we as human beings, when we consider the miracle of our brains, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter whether you believe in creationism or evolution. The reality is that we as human beings are wired to receive what we want to hear more quickly than what we do not want to be confronted with. So if there was a way to actually perform this kind of an experiment, it would be interesting. And it would be, you put a human being in front of maybe an arc or maybe even a total circle of a number of other human beings. And what would happen is if they were all saying something different, we would tune into the voices that we're already predilected, if you will, to
Mm-hmm.
agree with, and therefore we would seek that out, right? So they could all be saying something different, and we would hone in on the one that we felt the most comfortable with. All right. So with that in mind, then we have to be willing to actually acknowledge that there is bias in the information that we're receiving. And again, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about speeches in the Roman Forum or we're talking about the early newspapers that were printed on Gutenberg presses, right? It doesn't matter. Or if we're looking at a phone and getting our news feeds for the day, it does not matter. What we have to do is understand that everything has a bias, and it takes great effort to not be biased. And that includes us as well. We have to recognize that we are biased individuals. And then by acknowledging that, we can prepare ourselves to open dialogue and meaningful conversation with people who have valued insight, even when that does not agree with our own foundational beliefs. In turn, this allows us to engage in healthy debate and not accusational diatribe.
Mm.
So, Randy, I used to teach my speech and debate students the rules of debate. What do you think might have been the number one rule, the first place that we had to start in terms of debate? So, debate is an exchange of ideas, right? That are typically oppositional or at least confrontational in some cases. But what's the number one rule of debate?
Know your facts.
Okay, right? And that is where almost everybody would start. But that's not the rule that I would teach my students. Okay.
Really?
Number
Okay.
one rule of debate, listen.
Oh.
You have to listen to your opponent. You have to be able to hear what it is that they're saying, because you cannot debate what you don't know or what you don't understand. So you have to listen. And then number two is actually asking clarifying questions in order to deepen your understanding. And number three, so notice that we haven't even got to the research part, right? Number three is that you need to treat your opponent with respect. So by attacking, all you're doing is you're alienating a thought opponent, and that's going to close the discussion, and nothing can change in that kind of an environment. So once you understand that those are the first three rules of debate, then it makes sense to go ahead and know your facts. But as you're doing it, suddenly you're going to realize, okay, so my opponent has said this, and here's what I think, and here's how I might be able to use some facts to maybe reset what the opposition point of view is and try to overcome their bias and bring them a little bit more into the middle, right? Now, I know that in competitive debate, the rules, when you're talking about debate competitions and specific events, it seems like sometimes they don't really care. All they care about is who can speak the fastest, who can speak the loudest, who can the most number of points towards the judges. In the real world, when we're talking about, say, for example, judges and lawyers debating, when we're talking about Congress debating, listen, ask clarifying questions, always, always, always respect the person as being an intelligent person, having some value, and we just need to listen so we then are able to create the compromises needed to be able to move forward. And too often we are just closed-minded and not willing to take the time to open our minds and sometimes open our hearts, right? So real quick, I'm going to share another really interesting thing relative to this. I would always have my government students and my debate students do a survey that would ask them all kinds of questions of what they believed in terms of politics, right? So these would be issue-driven questions.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, the survey then would say, okay, your answers mean that you most closely align with X political party, or at least a political platform. Okay. Now, I know that too often we think, well, there's Democrats and there's Republicans. The truth is that there's about 24 active political parties in the United States, but most of them are so small that they don't get a lot of face time, right? And so we always think of Democrats and Republicans. But the reality is that often the case has been that by the time that they've answered all of these questions, that when the engine comes back and says, well, you actually most closely align with this kind of political platform, they're shocked. It's like, wait, I thought I was 100%, a Republican or 100% Democrat. And what they realize is that they're somewhere in the middle, and there are other platforms that for them would be more sustainable, more agreeable. And it's interesting because we're talking about technology that then actually has been able to change minds and open up to a whole other level of we can work together.
Yeah. And I think that technology has done both. It's helped in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
but social media promised us connection with people,
Yeah.
right? And it does. It does great job. I've got family out of state that it's wonderful to keep up with them through technology, but it also creates isolation. It creates a dependency on that. It's the dopamine hit of feeding your brain over and over and over things that are pleasing to the eye.
Right. And what we're already wired to want.
Right, right. And so, and then now AI promises to free up our time. And mostly it just lands as an anxiety tool. But I also want to say on the side note that it's probably the news and the interpretation of what AI does is the most stressful, not necessarily AI itself. But it does create the question, am I going to have a job in the future? Our news feed promised us to, give us more accurate stuff. But there's so much to choose from. And I guess that's part of the benefit of technology is the world is wide open. And we have so many more choices than we had before. But knowing how to choose is the key. And the fact that you're teaching your students that, I think, is just marvelous. It's that you're giving them a skill that'll last their lifetime.
A skill, and then also the tools, right? I mean, that's
Right, right.
now, by the way, there's a school in Oregon, I believe, that is now the teachers are AI. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know,
Are they going to be effective in teaching history, social studies of all kinds? Right? I don't know.
I don't know. It could be a fad. Maybe it'll.
It could be. It's an experiment to be sure.
Yeah, and there may be some topics that's
Yeah.
okay with, right?
Right.
So, and it's not that these tools are bad. They don't. These tools don't make us the bad guy either. It just means that we have a lot um, that are trying to use us on autopilot. Whether it's news or social media, um, and then we tend to believe where our attention goes. So I think it's getting back to something that isn't as complicated. It's choosing on purpose the
Yeah.
stuff that used to just happen automatically. Like sitting down, having a conversation with somebody, going to lunch, going for a walk without your phone, talking to people face to face.
Right.
Um,
We had an episode talking about the value of dinner together, didn't we?
we did. That's right. And I think more importantly is checking the source
Yeah.
before you share. So we're verifying. We're zero trust. I mentioned zero trust last
Right.
episode, right?
Well, again, the idea that we should question even what we think or feel allows us then to explore the possibility that maybe we're wrong, or at least we need to be more educated as to what is the reality.
Yeah. So I did a really lousy job of summing up what we were just talking about. So maybe you can do a better job.
Well, I think if I had to sum up in a very brief statement, I would say be willing. Be
Mm,
willing to question what you think, be willing to explore and research. And if you have that willingness, then chances are very high that you're going to be able to find what is real, what is true, more likely than if you just say, I don't have time, which is a real issue, or I'm not interested in trying to learn what is real or is true. I'm just going to accept everything as it's fed to me. And then you end up in those echo chambers and confirmation bias.
Yeah. Yeah. So we started tonight asking if the tools we built to bring us together were actually doing that. And the honest answer is not by default, but yes, you can do it on purpose. And they
Yeah.
absolutely can. So our encouragement is simply put the phone down a little more, check your sources a little more, and just remember the algorithm doesn't actually know you. It only knows what you clicked on last. So I'm Randy Burgoyne, and I hope you enjoyed our episode of Centered Live. Be sure to like and share. And what do you think, Paul?
Well, the challenge is out there. So good luck, everybody. We hope that you found tonight's discussion valuable.
And with Mr. Music queued up.
Good night, everybody.